Hello, ladies, gentlemen, non binary friends. Welcome back to another episode of Actors with Issues, where we bring you casual chats with the stars of TV, film, Broadway, and beyond. As always, I'm your host, Juan Ayala. Thanks for tuning in. Today's guest is an actor, singer, dancer, choreographer, and voice artist who has worked in productions of West Side Story, Newsies, and The Sound of Music, and he's currently touring all over the country as Tumble Brutus in the North American tour of Cats. Please welcome to the show, Sean McManus. Sean, how are you? Welcome to the show.
Hi, I'm good, Juan. Thank you for having me.
So we always start with a game called Getting to Know You. It's a 60-second rapid fire round of questions to get to know you a little better. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Alrighty. Coffee or tea?
Okay, I'm already so bad at this game because both, I love both, but I'll say T,
Film or television?
television,
Screen acting or stage acting?
stage acting,
Hero or villain?
hero,
Rom-coms or horror?
horror.
Skiing or beach day?
Oh, beach day. I'm from New Jersey. Beach day.
Instagram or TikTok?
TikTok.
What is the last show that you binge watched?
Cheers season 2 on Netflix. It's so good.
If you could guest star in any TV show, which would you choose?
Schitt's Creek. I know it's already closed and everything. I know it's already ended, but Schitt's Creek.
What actors had the biggest influence on you?
I would say Andrew Keenan Bolger for sure. I also love Robin Williams, Sutton Foster, Hugh Jackman, all those good ones.
And lastly, describe your most memorable audition in 3 words. And memorable can be either good or bad. So that's up to you.
Forgot the words.
I feel like that
Yeah.
happens to all of us.
Oh my God. Yeah. I'm sure you can relate to the whole like you get to the moment that you've rehearsed over and over again. And then all of a sudden you're just
Gone.
like, I have no idea what to say right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not fun.
So, Sean, you're a Jersey boy, born and raised, and you later went to Boston Conservatory. You got your BFA in musical theater. Were you involved in the arts at a young age, or did that come a little bit later for you?
Yeah, I was definitely involved starting from a young age. I started doing the creative drama classes at Paper Mill Playhouse because I'm
Mm.
from Summit, New Jersey, which is literally like 5 minutes drive from Paper Mill in Millburn. And it was basically my second home for a while because I grew up in a pretty like homogenous neighborhood and everybody was the classic like jock athlete, and I just really didn't fit into those things. My parents tried, bless their hearts, but it didn't really work. And so they finally found drama as a really good outlet for me. So then once that started happening, then I started dance when I was about 11, and then I started just like adding on from there. So yeah, I started with like creative drama classes when I
Mm.
was probably like 8 or 9, started dancing and then took voice lessons. And then I actually did my first regional job at Paper Mill. I was in Sound of Music there when I was 14. And that was
Mm.
like the moment when I wanted to make this a career.
Mm.
Like it was like, it felt like really legitimizing, and it felt like a really just like big moment to be a part of. So that was when I was like, oh, this can be more than just a hobby. This can be
Right.
something that you pursue as a job.
Yeah, it's an aha moment that definitely is what it's like you hit the nitrous for like someone's passion. Like that's really okay.
Mhm.
This is like a thing. Like it's not just a dream. The dream can become a reality. And I mean, in Paper Mill, I mean, so many shows have started at Paper Mill and then gone to Broadway. Like, what an awesome place to have access to like be right around the corner. That's really cool.
Oh yeah, and I had just seen Newsies because that was the
Mm.
season before. So I saw that and I was like, oh my God, this is everything to me. So then to be in one of their main stage shows the next season, I was like, oh, it's possible. Here we go. So, then like the fire
Yeah.
underneath kind of got lit.
And now that you're on tour, what's that whole experience been like for you? Especially given everything with the pandemic still going on. So what's Cats been like for you so far?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'm super grateful to have a job,
Mm.
and touring is definitely a challenge. There's a lot of adversity that comes with it. Always having to adjust to like climates, especially right now, is very difficult, and adjusting to different venues is hard, but the show itself is so much fun.
Mm,
I really enjoy a longer run of shows because you get more comfortable and you can start to play a little bit more with your castmates and play on stage. So that the show itself is kind of the least stressful part because it's the constancy in your life. It's everything else that kind of is hard to deal with, being away from family
mm.
and dealing with, doing the show 8 times a week. But the show itself is a ball. It's so much fun. It's really hard. Like anybody who's like, oh, it's cats, like how hard could it? Like, oh no, it's a challenge. Like moving nonstop, singing your face off. It's a lot, but it's
Mm.
so much fun.
And what would you say is maybe one of the bigger um, and unexpected challenges that have come with being on tour and with the show itself?
I would say the biggest challenge is stamina.
Mm,
When you're like I was thinking to myself, even leaving school, I've done like month-long runs of shows before, but it's a whole different beast, like doing it for like we're now on our like 6th month, I think, and it's
mm.
it's it's a lot. It's a whole other muscle. I'm 23, I have all the energy in the world, and then I'm like, oh, this is no joke, you know. And I love that challenge, but it's also, I guess, the big misconception of it is like you have to constantly be present because with this show, swings and understudies are on all the time because it's a very
Mm,
physically strenuous show. So people, need a break every now and then. So there's constantly new people in different tracks all the time. So if you become complacent and aren't like keeping your eyes open, then like you could get hurt because the show is like
right.
moving in 1,000 directions. So I think that's the most difficult part about touring with cats specifically.
And just going back a little bit about your time at Boston Conservatory, what was that whole experience like for you at such a sort of big school with for like musical theater specifically?
I loved it. I love Boston. I lived right next to Fenway Park, so the whole like environment of it was amazing, and school was really incredible. I came in primarily like as a dancer,
Mm,
so I definitely sought out Boston Conservatory for that because you can get an emphasis in dance your last year in the program, which basically just means you're adding on more classes to your daily schedule. And I mean, my dance teacher, Michelle Chasse, was like my biggest mentor while I was there. And she made like all 4 years there so worth it. I also just like grew a lot as a person. Um, it wasn't your standard like college campus. You kind of had to
mm,
make your college experience whatever you wanted it to be because there was nothing really built in for you, right? So like you had your acting, singing, and dancing classes and some of your select liberal arts things you could choose from, but then you also had this great artistic city around you that could
mm.
fulfill you in other ways that weren't just your performing self. Um, yeah, it was really, really hard. It's really challenging. Anybody who's like gone through a BFA program knows that, but it was so rewarding, and I really highly recommend it to anybody who is looking at schools.
And how much time was there between you graduating and Cats?
I graduated in, I think like May, like 8th or 9th, and then got cats 2 weeks later. So
Oh wow,
not too
that was
much
fast. Yeah,
time. Yeah.
gotcha. I was gonna ask, like what was the biggest wake up call between you graduating and your first job, but it happened right. It happened like right, back to back. So that's awesome.
Yeah, maybe the show was the wake up call. I was like, oh shoot. Yeah.
Yeah, right into it. So, just looking through your Instagram and your TikTok, I know you have some amazing impressions under your belt. You have Jennifer Coolidge, Moira Rose. You've done some. Oh my God, her name is slipping my mind. Kristen Wiig. Um,
Yes,
so,
yes.
so you've done a bit of everything. So, listeners, definitely go check out his Instagram and TikTok for more of that. How did you get started doing impressions? Was it something like, are you really good at like Heads Up or like sort of games like that? Like, how did all of that start for you?
I love that game, by the way. Yeah, I've always been a natural mimic.
Mm,
I used to, that's kind of how I learned too. Like I'm a huge like visual learner, I'm an auditory learner. So like I learn by repeating things.
mm,
You know what I mean? So if somebody like shows me how to do something, I'll know how to do it. But I started impressions like from a really young age, like just like I liked to do voices and I liked
mm,
to be wacky because it made me laugh and it seems to make other people laugh. So that's why I really got into it. But all the TikTok stuff, it started because I was in quarantine with COVID during school.
Oh
It was
boy.
like about a year ago now. Yeah, because we're in January now. So it was about a year ago. And I'm sitting there and I'm like so bored, and I'm like, how do I just need to do something to make myself laugh. So like Olivia Rodrigo's album had just come out. So I one day was like, oh, I got my driver's license last week, like doing it as Moira. And I put it on TikTok. And granted, I'm not doing this because I think this is gonna be a big deal or anything, or like that people are gonna see this. I just think
Mm.
it's funny because I love Schitt's Creek and I love that song. And then I woke up and it had like 1.5 million views already. And I was like, what's going on? So it kind of all started from there. And then I just kept doing it over and over, like choosing different songs and putting like Jennifer Coolidge's voice or Moira's voice into it. And now I kind of just do it for fun, but I really enjoy it. It's a lot of fun.
The one that really got me is one of your more recent ones of Jennifer Coolidge singing "Defying Gravity." Just the last note, the I
Yeah,
like
bring me
lost it.
down. Ah, yeah.
Especially because she had like this career resurgence between White Lotus and Single All the Way. It's like, oh my God, like where has she been? But yeah, it's just so funny how she like sort of popped in and you have that impression like ready to go. That's brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely.
What would you
Hire
say is
me
your
for your party.
favorite? What would you say is your favorite Jennifer Coolidge role? Legally Blonde. What do you think?
See, I would say Paulette in Legally Blonde because that was my introduction to her, but she's like so iconic. Like
Mm,
people forget that, and I'm like, because people kind of say like, oh, she's like the butt of a joke. I was like, right, because she's a genius.
right.
You know what I mean? So I think that one because the first time I remember doing her voice was like, oh, you look like the 4th of July on a hot dog. Like that to me will resonate for forever. Um, Also, the White Lotus, like you just mentioned, she's amazing.
Yeah,
Like so
incredible.
random, but she's so good.
Yeah. And then, I mean, I don't know if you've seen Single All the Way, but her role on that is also just like hilarious. Again, it's just like good to see her again because, actors really do come in and out, especially when with comedy, especially like there's only for some people you can only do comedy for so long. Um, and like her shtick, but then she has like this different type of role, different type of show and environment with White Lotus. So I'm really glad that she is getting that sort of resurgence because she's freaking hilarious. I love her.
Absolutely. I completely agree. I also felt very seen at that part when she's like, the gays just know how to do stuff. They don't just know theater. And I was like, oh, I feel so seen. She's known about us all along.
She gets us.
She does. She does.
So the name of our show is Actors with Issues. So let's get into the issues. So you have always been a very vocal mental health advocate, as someone who has dealt with anxiety, with OCD, and as you mentioned in our emails going back and forth, there's always been just this taboo in certain parts of our industry about mental health. Some people are like, just keep that hush hush, don't talk about that. But as an artist, how have you been able to navigate all of that, especially given the amount of pressure that faces us on a regular basis, like things like audition anxiety or anything like that? So, what can you share?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to thank you for having this platform for people because I think that that's super important.
Mm,
And I think
thank you.
yeah, absolutely. The more we encourage conversations like these, the less taboo it'll become.
Mm,
I will say, I think the pandemic has been really, for lack of a better word, traumatic for a lot of people in our industry, for the whole world,
mm,
of course, but for our industry especially. And I think it's brought out a lot of things that were already bubbling to the surface, but are now heightened because of the times that we're living in. So for me, I've dealt with anxiety, not necessarily performance anxiety. It was more so just like I would have like panic attacks and I didn't really know what it was. When you're that
mm,
young, you just are really scared. You don't know how to process it. Like no one really tells you what anxiety is. Or maybe they do, but they don't tell you it's something you can have like as a disorder, for example.
mm,
So I've dealt with it my whole life. It would wane in and out kind of. Throughout high school, like it wasn't really there. Through college, it came back a little bit, but I've always dealt with it. I've always pushed through. Then when I graduated, I noticed graduated college, sorry. I noticed a lot of weird anxious tendencies coming up like all the time. And I got to the show and to cats and it just got out of control, sort of. You know, my OCD tendencies, it's not a lot of people talk about, but it's very overwhelming and it can get debilitating, honestly. So I actually made the decision about a month and a half into the run to take a few weeks of medical leave to like pursue treatment for my anxiety and OCD, which I had never done before.
Mm.
And I was petrified like to do that because first of all, I'm like, I've worked so hard to get here. I don't want to leave. Like, how do you say no to a dream? You know what I mean? Like, especially when a lot of the mantra in our industry is you should be so lucky to get here because so many people want this job. So you should only be grateful all the
Mm.
time. So then I had that in my brain. And then as I was leaving, I I wanted to put it out there, like into the world. Like I wanted to announce it, not as like a, oh, look at me, like this is what I'm doing, but just as an opportunity to say, like, hey, I'm not a person who's like been super open about this in the past, but I think now is a good time to be. And I even showed it to my mom right before I posted it. And it was basically just talking about like that I was taking some time off from the show, but I've been very supported, this and that. And like opening up about like me having anxiety and me having
Mm.
OCD. And then my mom said to me, and I don't blame her because for a long time, I think this was the norm in the workforce. She said, like, I completely support you. Like, I will do whatever you want to do. I'm worried about you putting this out there because I think people could retaliate against you in the industry. I think it could be really damaging. And I was like, yes, that being said, if people are not going to hire me because of this reason, I don't want to work with them anyway.
Mm.
They're not going to be productive towards my journey. And especially now, like after we've gone through this much of like a global crisis, like why are we going to like pass people by because of something that's like not normalized in our society, right?
Yeah.
But I was nervous too. So then I posted about it and the support that I got from the Broadway community, but mostly like my friends and family, it was just so lovely. And it was kind of overwhelming too, because when I opened that door, I had a ton of other actors, some who had done Cats, like our production, but had done it in New York a couple of years ago. They were messaging me saying how much they were anxious, like doing that show and
Mm.
how they felt like they couldn't own up to their struggles and how they couldn't be transparent because they didn't want to be judged. So it just reminded me how, number one, I'm not alone, but also how big this context is, how big this problem is in our industry. And it's just, I personally don't think I don't think it's talked about enough.
We're close to 100 episodes of this show. Like, I've talked about my mental health, about therapy, about all of that. So it's like it's all out there. It's also just important for people to know that they're not alone and that they're also struggling with that. DMs exist for that reason. They could reach out. I mean, that's how we connected. Was you literally DM'd me,
Yeah.
and here you are, and here we are having the conversation now. So it's really important to have that conversation
Yeah.
because so many people feel that they can't talk about it because they feel that they'll be judged, that they'll be made fun of or ignored or criticized or whatever it may be. But yeah, definitely I want to continue using this show as a sort of platform for that. And we have all types of discussions on the show, whether it's about like diversity or representation, whether it's for the Latinx community, for LGBTQIA plus, or for whoever, that's the goal of the show. Actors with issues, we've got problems, let's talk about it.
Yeah, we do.
So I don't want to take up too much more of your time, so we're going to wrap up with our last game. It's a non-rapid fire, so no need to worry about timers or anything. Fill in the blank. If I weren't working in the arts, I'd be
I'd be either a teacher or I'd be like in politics. That's a fun fact. I love the political atmosphere.
Mm. What's a world issue that you think more people should care about?
I would say, I guess, mental health and also like mental health as it pertains to marginalized groups of people,
Mm.
because those are people who are the most prone to getting those kinds of um, diagnoses. So I think it's very important to acknowledge that like it's it's very rampant throughout certain communities, and that in terms of intersectionality, which you were sort of like touching on, like mental health is a huge part of that as well,
Mm,
and how it disproportionately affects certain groups of people.
yeah. What's the best advice you've ever gotten?
The best advice I've ever gotten is to keep your eyes on your own paper when it comes to acting and when it comes to
Mm,
being in this business, because I think when you're younger, there's a lot of like jealousy and envy, because you see people getting jobs that you want. You see, some people are flourishing, some people aren't. And I think what's important to remember is like other people's successes are not your failures. They're
mm,
just other people's successes, and they're going to cheer your successes when you have them.
yeah. And what's the worst advice you've ever gotten?
I would say, you know what? I hate to say, I think the show must go on.
Oh
Because
yeah. I hate it.
here's the thing, Juan. Like, I I totally I in most cases, yes, I agree with that. Here's the problem. We've just seen for the past like 18 months, like sometimes it just can't. Like when it's in a pandemic, you know what? It can't. And we want it to, but it can't. And also sometimes like it's just okay to take a step back.
Mm,
Like a lot of other people, it's normalized, it's or at least it's becoming normalized in other um industries, and I think it should be normalized in this one. Like Simone Biles is a huge inspiration to me.
mm.
She has been for years. Like I was a former gymnast, so like what she did at the Olympics is very inspiring to me. But that the idea that like pausing and that the show maybe doesn't need to go on for a day if 10 people have COVID, like that's okay too.
Yeah. And lastly, in 10 words or less, what advice would you give to a young actor?
And ooh, wow, these are the hard hitting questions. Um, I would say, I would say be you, but work hard to be the best you. Because being you is great, but everyone's just like, be yourself. Like, work hard to be the best version that you can possibly be of
Mm,
yourself. Because
mm.
just showing up as you sometimes isn't enough. You got to work to fine tune and really like analyze the things that make you great.
So, Sean, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. Thank you for reaching out. I'm really glad we got to chat because I know that people are just hearing responses from people and whatnot, like for every episode. People always find these conversations particularly helpful and insightful. So, thank you for everything you've shared.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was so fun.
And if anyone wants to follow you on Instagram or on social media, where can they find you?
They can find me on Instagram at smcmanus3 or on TikTok at Shawnee_Mac for all of the weirdness that I do.
And you can all follow us on Instagram at Actors with Issues. Give me a follow at Juaniala Official. And if you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe to the show wherever you're listening and catch new episodes every Monday. And if Cats the Musical happens to stop in your town, go see Sean and one of our recent guests, Zach Bravo, who I'm sure you know as well, on the tour.
Oh,
Uh,
bestie.
and I'm Juaniala. This is Actors with Issues, and we'll see you next week.